Released in 1998, The Truman Show has one of the most inherently fascinating concepts of any movie I've ever heard of. Even if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you basically know what it's about. Jim Carrey plays Truman Burbank, a man who is unaware that his entire life is being broadcast live on television around the world 24/7, that the world he inhabits is an elaborate set, and all the people around him are paid actors. Much like The Matrix, it's the kind of premise that sticks with you and makes you question your own reality. If it's possible for the brain to be tricked like this, how do we know that the world we live in is even real? But let's not get existential right off the bat. This film has been talked about and analyzed over and over through a variety of different lenses, a testament to its quality as a work of literature. But today, I'd simply like to examine how The Truman Show exemplifies the common properties and themes of speculative fiction. But first, what exactly is speculative fiction? What, is it not just a fancy way of saying sci-fi without sounding like a nerd? Spec-fic is all about questions, specifically ones that begin with what if. What if this thing happened? What if that happened? How would the world react? What would happen to us as humans? And what effect would it have on, well, everything? It's all about imagined futures, both possible and less possible, that help us to cope with or understand things happening in our present. It often plays into our fears, especially our greatest fear, the unknown. As a piece of speculative fiction, The Truman Show explores a variety of themes that are trademarks of the genre. These include the nature of simulated realities, surveillance and propaganda, the conflict between societal order and personal freedoms, and the meaning of freedom and free will. When you think of speculative fiction, you probably think about sci-fi. Time travel, aliens, robots, artificial intelligence taking over the world. But that isn't necessarily how it has to be. Case in point, The Truman Show. It's about a simulated reality, but not one like The Matrix where it's digital, made of future technology that we can't comprehend. This is just a really big TV set. Though it would require a ton of time and money, this is technically something that could happen in our current day. There's no fictional fantasy technology here. It's all operated by people in a control room, much like any TV show, just on a ludicrously colossal scale. And that's kind of what makes this movie even more fascinating and unsettling. The fact that something like this could happen. Even though on the surface, it's not a scary movie at all. It's got a lot of Jim Carrey doing his Jim Carrey antics. I heard the original script was much darker, but I love what we ended up with. How the humor and lighthearted vibe sort of hides how deeply fucked up this premise is. The more you think about it, and the more the scale of the operation is revealed, the more terrifying it becomes. Another common aspect of speculative fiction stories is dramatic irony, when the characters don't know something that the audience does. I don't think I need to spell that one out, do I? It often goes hand in hand with stories of simulated realities. The characters don't know that the world they inhabit is fake, and they have to find out the truth and attempt to escape. The entire crux of this movie is dramatic irony. The film does a masterful job at this because you know the vague idea of what's going on from the beginning, but it leaves many questions unanswered and reveals them over time. The first half of the movie is essentially a series of strange occurrences that drop hints to both Truman and the viewers about the nature of his world. And even once everything is spelled out during the scene where the creator is interviewed by the voice of Principal Skinner, true story, the enormous scale of it still comes as a surprise. Next is the theme of surveillance. Of course, Truman is watched 24/7 through an intricate network of about 5,000 hidden cameras. If you look closely, you can start to notice them all over. Many of the supporting characters also seem to have some knowledge of their locations, like how Meryl looks into the camera during the car scene, or Marlon talking to it while looking for Truman. The Truman Show is essentially surveillance pushed to the highest possible degree. Not only is Truman watched at all times, no matter where he goes, but it's also broadcasted around the world on fucking television. Everyone is watching him, always. They make a point to show how huge True Mania is, showing viewers around the globe, and even an entire bar dedicated to and themed after the show. The viewers sort of just see it as any other show, and it's so twistedly comedic. The casual conversations they have, like, oh, why are they showing these old flashback scenes? Hey, don't we have this one on the greatest hits tape? Everyone is just so casual about this flagrant disregard for a human being's rights and privacy. The fact that those protesting against the show, the Free Truman movement, is established to be a very small vocal minority, only seen in the movie through Sylvia, is both insane and honestly pretty realistic. The difference between surveillance in this and in something like George Orwell's 1984 is of course that Truman does not know that he is being watched. That's the entire point behind the show, as outlined in the first lines of the movie. Television viewers have grown bored of actors and yearn to see something more real, how a real person with real emotions reacts. Similarly, propaganda is a common theme in speculative fiction, and and it is fascinating in The Truman Show because all the things that Truman sees are specifically targeted at him. Everything is made to make him think the way the network wants him to think. A falling light from the sky that could blow our cover? I'll just explain it away over the radio as an airplane shedding parts. That example also furthers the main facet in which propaganda plays into the story, Truman's instilled fear of travel and the sea. They only have the set for Sea Haven, so the network is forced to make up ways to discourage Truman from trying to leave his home and therefore discovering the truth. The character of Truman's father is killed off during a boating incident specifically to make him fear the ocean. Every person around him and the media he watches is always preaching about how you don't have to leave home to live a happy life. Even in the travel agency, just look at these posters. It could happen to you! It's so hilariously on the nose. Truman's father breaking onto the set is also explained as a crackdown on the homeless, both by his mother and the newspapers. Everyone and everything is reinforcing what the network wants Truman to believe and exactly how they want him to think. You could argue that the product placement is also a form of propaganda. It's the show's sole source of revenue, so quite often they have to awkwardly shove in some product or another. Meryl has lines talking up a variety of sponsored products, and the two old guys push Truman against a giant advertisement so it shows on camera. They're trying to make Truman live in a way that maximizes their profits. Like everything else in the film, this is also pushed to such an extreme degree, as it's stated that everything on the show is for sale. Now, a common conflict in speculative fiction is the idea of overall stability versus personal freedoms. This is where the ethical dilemma comes in, and is best represented by the viewpoints of the creator of the show, Christoph. In Christoph's mind, he thinks he's doing a noble thing. He argues that Truman's world is the ideal world because it is controlled, and therefore there is no danger. The real world is the sick place, and Sea Haven is how things should be. However, because of this controlled nature, Truman cannot have free will. He wants to travel the world, but can't be allowed to, lest he discover the truth. He wants to be with Sylvia, but cannot because she's just an extra, a background character, not the person who was hired and rehearsed specifically to play the role of his wife. All of his thoughts are controlled by manufactured events that they insert into his life, and the people around him influence how they want him to think. Christoph asserts that Truman has free will because he technically could leave if he really wanted to, yet simultaneously does everything in his power to prevent him from leaving. He impedes Truman's progress anytime he tries to break out of the norm, and hides the truth by any means necessary. Speaking of ethics, they mention that Truman is the first child to have been legally adopted by a corporation, which is such a bleak thing to just casually mention, like, ah yes, this is a milestone, isn't it? Like, no! Don't fucking do that! The irony that Christoph highly values his own privacy while completely violating Truman's by putting his entire life on view it's palpable. You could cut it with a 1,000-degree knife. Well, it sure wouldn't be a discussion on The Truman Show without touching upon the ending. I love how they leave it up to interpretation what happens next, because it really raises the question, how is Truman supposed to live a normal life in the real world now when everyone knows him and everything about him? It feels like a happy ending because he does escape and everyone is cheering for him, but that thought stays in the back of your head. How is he supposed to function as a human being after living in a fake world for his whole life? And the little bit at the end where everyone's just like, nah, what else is on? Change the channel. It's so perfect. As a piece of speculative fiction, The Truman Show is incredibly unique. It features many of the trademarks of the genre, but also sets itself apart with its contemporary setting and lack of invented technology. And that's what makes it so fascinating. It explores many themes related to speculative fiction, including simulated realities, surveillance, propaganda, the conflict of societal order versus personal freedoms, ethics, and free will. Yet it doesn't have to rely on the tried and true dystopian future setting, or have artificially intelligent machines as the bad guys. Sometimes the man-made horrors beyond our comprehension are very human. Hopefully I've demonstrated not only how it's an example of speculative fiction, but how it tackles these common tropes of the genre in a distinct and interesting way. Of course, this is only one reading of the film. Like any good work of art, it can be analyzed from many perspectives. Often, The Truman Show is seen as a satire of reality TV itself, and has become increasingly relevant since its release with the rise of the internet, where many people chronicle their day-to-day lives in detail. The Truman Show was ahead of its time, and continues to be relevant to this day in so many ways. Thanks for watching. Oh, and in case I don't see ya, well, you know the rest. But today, I'd simply like to of course, Truman is watched 24/7 through an intricate network of about 5,000... I can't say conversations. And the two old guys... He impedes Truman progress and...